As human beings, we're programmed to respond to stories. They're part of who we are. It's how we evolved to understand our place in the world before we had written language, how we passed on lessons for where to find food or what threats were coming from us for us, or how to build relationships within our tribes and our families was through storytelling. So a few different things happen when we hear a really good story. The first is that the neural activity in our brain increases fivefold. Stories illuminate the city of our mind. Essentially, our brain runs on electric pulses, right? And when we hear stories, our brain lights up. And neuroscientists have this saying that neurons that fire together, wire together. So it's basically the idea that when we're hearing a story and our brain is lighting up, you have all these neurons that are then wiring together, which triggers us to remember more of the information that we're getting at that time. And stories do another thing, which is that they trigger the release of this neurochemical called oxytocin, which is also known in some circles as the love drug. About 10 years ago, all we really knew about oxytocin is that it was released when, say, a mother would be with her baby. But what we've discovered since then, through the work of neuroscientists like Dr. Paul Zak, is that stories actually trigger the release of oxytocin in very much the same way. What Dr. Zak has developed that I am super excited about, and it's just probably the first iteration in a lot of technological advances we'll see in this space, is a tiny neuro sensor that goes on your forearm that can measure the impact that stories are have on us on a physiological level. And it does this in two ways. First, through heart rate to measure attention, and the second is through the vagus nerve to measure oxytocin production in the brain. So when you are wearing the sensor and you watch certain types of content and you get above a certain threshold of score, they're actually able to very closely predict purchase action after that. This technology is very much in its early days, but I think this is something we're going to see a lot more of over the next 5 or 10 years. Really, with any story, relatability is the first and most essential element to it. So we are programmed to respond to stories that we can see ourselves in automatically. The same thing is true in any sort of content. So when you're speaking to your audience, you either want to present a main protagonist in the story, a client, a customer, a thought leader, someone who did something super cool for another company that they can see themselves in, or you as the author, you want to speak to them directly. So one of the most effective ways is just by targeting the exact people you want to reach in the headline. There's a question, right? What if I don't have a fancy schmancy neuro sensor? A lot of this still applies. What I want to emphasize more than anything else is how stories affect our brains. The things you have to keep in mind if you want people to really feel connected to the content you're creating. And most importantly, hire great storytellers, because the people who are going to understand how to tell great stories and how to create content that is above that threshold for being useful are going to be people who have trained to do it, who have been doing it their entire lives. Stories make us remember and they make us care. And the reason that content marketing works isn't for some artsy-fartsy reasons, it's because our brains are programmed for stories.